If your computer feels increasingly restrictive, slower over time, or too dependent on background systems, this guide is for you. Easily switch from Windows 11 to Linux without losing your data, without disrupting your workflow, and without getting stuck midway. Linux adoption is still small globally, but it is growing steadily. Reports from StatCounter show gradual increases, particularly among developers and users extending older hardware. Gaming has also improved due to Valve's Proton compatibility layer. This means Linux is no longer just a niche system. It is now a realistic option, but only if you switch methodically. Instead of rushing it, follow this structured process. The first step is to audit your workflow in detail. This is where you identify what you actually depend on, not what you assume. Open your current system and go through every application you use across a typical week. Break it down into categories, daily essentials, occasional tools, and critical software tied to work or study. This includes browsers, office tools, editing software, communication apps, and any specialized programs. Once listed, evaluate each one. Some will have native Linux versions, some will have alternatives, and some will be Windows only. This classification is important because it determines your transition strategy. For example, LibreOffice can handle most standard document tasks, but it may struggle with complex formatting or macros. GIMP can replace Photoshop for many users, but not all professional workflows translate directly. If you rely on Windows-only software, you need a fallback plan. That could involve dual booting, virtualization, or testing compatibility layers like Wine. The goal here is not to solve everything immediately, but to avoid surprises later. Most failed transitions happen because users assume everything will work the same way. This step removes that uncertainty and sets realistic expectations. The second step is backing up your data properly. This is not a routine precaution. It is your safety net if anything goes wrong. You need to copy everything important: documents, photos, videos, downloads, application data, browser bookmarks, and saved credentials. Use an external storage device as your primary backup, and if possible, add a cloud backup as a secondary layer. Redundancy matters because installation processes involve disk partitioning, and mistakes at that stage can lead to permanent data loss. Even if you follow instructions carefully, unexpected interruptions like a power failure can create problems. A verified backup eliminates that risk. Verification is the part most people skip. After creating your backup, open files from it on another device. Check that documents open correctly, images load properly, and file structures are intact. If something is missing or corrupted, fix it before proceeding. You should also consider exporting browser data and password managers separately. Some configurations do not transfer automatically between operating systems. Taking a few extra minutes here prevents hours of frustration later. At this stage, do not proceed unless you are confident your data exists safely outside your system. This step alone determines whether the transition is reversible. The third step, where you choose the right Linux distribution. This decision often feels overwhelming because there are many options, but for beginners, the choice should remain focused. In 2026, Linux Mint, Ubuntu, and Fedora continue to offer the most reliable entry points. Linux Mint is designed to feel familiar, especially for Windows users. Its layout reduces the learning curve and makes navigation intuitive. Ubuntu has the largest ecosystem, extensive documentation, and strong community support. Fedora provides newer software and technologies, which can be useful if you want access to the latest features, but it may require slightly more adjustment. The key here is alignment with your comfort level. If you want the least friction, choose Linux Mint. If you want a balanced and widely supported system, choose Ubuntu. If you are comfortable adapting and want newer features, Fedora is suitable. Avoid spending too much time comparing distributions beyond this stage. You can always switch later once you are more familiar with Linux. The goal now is to get started with something stable and well supported. This decision does not lock you in permanently. It simply defines your starting point. The fourth step is to create a bootable USB installer. This is how you bring Linux onto your system. Start by downloading the ISO file from the official website of your chosen distribution. Avoid third-party sources to reduce the risk of compromised files. Once downloaded, use a tool like Rufus or Balena Etcher to write the ISO file onto a USB drive. This process converts the USB into a bootable environment. You will need a USB drive with at least 8 GB of storage. If the distribution provides a checksum, verify it. This ensures that the file has not been corrupted during download. While this step is often skipped by beginners, it adds a layer of assurance that your installation media is reliable. During this process, ensure that you select the correct USB device to avoid overwriting other drives. Once the bootable USB is created, safely eject it. This step may seem simple, but it is foundational. A faulty or corrupted installer can cause issues later, so take a moment to do it correctly. And the fifth step, you test Linux through a live environment. This is one of the most important stages in the entire process. Instead of installing Linux immediately, You boot from the USB and select the option to try the system without installing it. This creates a temporary environment where you can explore the system and test compatibility. Spend time here. Do not rush. Check your Wi-Fi connection, test audio playback, verify display resolution, and connect any peripherals you use regularly. Open applications, browse the web, and simulate your normal tasks. If something critical does not work here, it will require additional setup later. This stage also helps you understand the user interface. You will get a sense of how navigation works, how applications are launched, and how settings are managed. This reduces confusion after installation. If major issues appear, such as no Wi-Fi or display problems, it is better to address them now rather than after installation. This step acts as a diagnostic phase and significantly reduces risk. Deciding your installation approach is the sixth step. You have two primary options: dual boot or full replacement. Dual boot allows you to install Linux alongside Windows. When your computer starts, you choose which operating system to use. This is the safest option because it preserves your existing setup and gives you time to transition gradually. Full replacement removes Windows entirely and installs Linux as the only operating system. This creates a cleaner setup, but requires confidence in your preparation. If something does not work as expected, reverting becomes more complicated. For most beginners, dual boot is the recommended approach. It provides flexibility and reduces pressure during the transition. You can continue using Windows for specific tasks while learning Linux at your own pace. This decision should be based on your workflow analysis from earlier. If you still depend on Windows-only software, dual boot is not optional, it is necessary. The seventh step is the actual installation. Once you begin, the installer will guide you through language selection, region settings, and network configuration. If you choose dual boot, most installers provide an option to install Linux alongside Windows automatically. This includes resizing your existing partition and allocating space for Linux. For beginners, using the automatic option is safer than manual partitioning. If you choose manual partitioning, you will need to create a root partition and optionally, a swap area and a home partition. This offers more control, but also introduces risk if done incorrectly. During installation, you will create a user account and password. This will be used for system access and administrative tasks. Once the process completes, your system will reboot. Remove the USB when prompted, and you will see a menu allowing you to choose between Windows and Linux. This is the point where your system officially becomes dual platform or fully Linux-based. The eighth step sets up your system after installation. The first priority is to update your system, as Linux distributions release frequent updates that include security patches, bug fixes, and performance improvements. Open the Update Manager and install everything available to ensure your system starts in a stable and secure state. After updating, check for driver support. Most hardware works immediately, but certain components, especially NVIDIA graphics, cards may require proprietary drivers for better performance and stability. Installing these early prevents issues later. Once updates and drivers are handled, take time to explore system settings. Adjust display resolution, keyboard layout, touchpad behavior, and power settings based on your preferences. These small changes can significantly improve your overall experience. This initial setup phase directly impacts how comfortable your system feels in daily use. Spending time here reduces friction, avoids repeated adjustments later, and helps you settle into the new environment more smoothly. The ninth step is about installing essential applications. Unlike Windows, Linux relies on centralized repositories, meaning software is installed through a built-in software manager instead of downloading installers from different websites. Begin with the basics: a reliable browser, an Office suite, and a media player. Once those are in place, gradually install additional tools based on your actual workflow rather than assumptions. It's important to avoid installing too many applications at once. Starting with a minimal setup keeps the system clean, easier to manage, and more stable. As your needs become clearer, you can expand your setup without clutter. This approach also lowers the risk of introducing unstable or unnecessary software, helping maintain performance and reliability over time. The 10th and final step is preparing for long-term use and adjustment. The first few days will involve adaptation, and tasks may feel slower at first because the workflow is different. This is expected and a part of the transition. As you continue using the system, familiarity builds. Learning a few basic commands and understanding how Linux handles files and permissions will gradually improve efficiency and confidence. It is also important to set up a system snapshot tool like TimeShift early. This allows you to restore your system if something breaks, acting as a safety layer, similar to restore points in Windows. Finally, maintain a habit of updating your system regularly. Linux gives you full control over updates, but that also means you are responsible for keeping your system secure and stable over time. Switching from Windows 11 to Linux in 2026 is entirely possible, but it requires a structured approach. If you follow these steps carefully, you can minimize risk and avoid most common problems. Each stage of the process is designed to reduce uncertainty, so you are not making decisions blindly or reacting to issues after they occur. What this does, over time, is change the nature of the switch itself. Instead of feeling like a disruptive leap, it becomes a controlled transition where you understand what works, what doesn't, and how to handle both. You retain access to your data, preserve your productivity, and avoid unnecessary setbacks. At that point, the switch is no longer uncertain. It becomes controlled, predictable, and sustainable. This in turn will enable you to decide with clarity whether Linux fits your long-term needs.